welcome to a very special Nerds and Friends. We have filmmaker Jon Casler joining me and Jake. But Jake, I wanted to ask about your interesting background that you got going on today.
Funny you should ask. It's a shower curtain, and the reason being is Colorado right now is experiencing some random heat spikes. I think spring is finally trying to shake its way out, and summer is trying to step in, but they're kind of stepping on each other's toes, if you will. And I'm moving at the end of the month, but I've got that like pre-move jitters of I want to pack everything in the house right now and sit here in an empty house for the next 3 weeks just because I'm so excited to move. But the reason I mention that is because my air conditioners are packed up and
Oh no.
I don't want to struggle with unpacking them, putting them in the window, packing them up again. Not that I can't, and if it gets hot enough, I will. But my solution was to sit in an ice cold bathtub. So,
Nice.
Like it's like football season, you know.
Yep,
You gotta go for the cold soak after the extra after practice.
that's exactly what I thought. I was a baseball kid, and I remember those summer days of like nothing is helping. I can sit in front of this air conditioner right in front of it, and it's still not even breaking the surface. I just got to submerge, and I gotta say, I'm liking this a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you are the very first person to appear on our podcast from a bathtub, so congratulations.
Excellent.
We'll have to make a t-shirt for you.
They always said I was a trendsetter. What can I say?
The Nerds and Friends Bathtub Award.
Live from Jake's bathtub.
Yep.
Quite literally.
Exclusive on set.
Yep. That's for our Patreon and our OnlyFans. We'll get to that. But
Hey, no.
So today
Right.
we are talking with independent filmmaker Jon Casler, because the other day we were messaging about some film trends in the recent box office, and as you were giving your insights on, most recently, we're recording this on June 6th of 2024, the box office bombs of mainly Furiosa and what was the other movie that underperformed recently? We were just talking about that, and I thought this would make a great podcast episode to hear your insights and then just kind of pivot into filmmaking in general. But I know Furiosa, the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, had a pretty rough box office run. Fall Guy, that's what we were talking about too. Fall Guy,
Right.
it seems like they cut short. I mean, me and Jake went and saw that in theaters, and it was fun, but they went to streaming like halfway through the theatrical run, which is unusual. Or maybe at the end of the theatrical run, there was some overlap. Like, Jake, I think when we went and saw it, it was available on streaming technically still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
my mom had actually already watched it at home, like at her own pace. And when I told her you and I were going to see it, she was like, "Why don't you just have him come over and watch it? Why are you going to the movie theater?"
Yeah,
I mean,
I like it on the big screen, but yeah,
So,
John,
yeah.
what's your analysis with that? Like, what's going on right now?
I mean, I think Jake just summed it up right there. That, I mean, right now, all the technological trends are running against theatrical exhibition because big screen TVs with a cinematic size and really nice picture quality are so cheap. Anyone can afford one. People can afford multiple ones.
Yeah.
And it's been true for a while, since about 2010, I would say. Like I bought my first big screen. I was kind of a late bloomer. I think I bought it in 2011. Yeah, and I still haven't bothered to upgrade. And now we have, I think another part too is the sound bars that came out. It used to be if you wanted really nice sound, you'd have to buy the stereo receiver, 5.1 speakers with a subwoofer that took up a ton of space. And that was just a bit much for most people. So once the sound bars came out, plus the TVs, and it's like, why do you want to go to the theater where they try to upsell you the $8 bucket of popcorn, $8 drink, and you sit next to some guy who starts coughing halfway through the movie and just won't shut up.
Yeah. Opening weekend, you get drunk people being loud during the movie, or
right. Yeah, people that don't bathe that sit in front of you. You know, it's just like the idea of the theater is cool, but the reality is that sometimes people suck, and then the other audience members kind of suck too. Yeah, and the theater in my hometown here in Louisville, Colorado, just got sold.
Really?
Like the building was built in the mid '90s, And for the last 10 years or so, it's been a Cinebare, one of those eat-in theaters, dining movie
Oh yeah,
theaters. Yeah, and that couldn't save it.
really.
Last thing I saw there was the Mario Brothers movie, and I wish I'd known that was closing. I would have seen one last movie to send it off, the good times. But it's going to be turned into affordable housing for University of Colorado Boulder employees. And I think
Oh,
that's just even more symbolic that land values have risen so much that we're better off turning the theater and its parking lot into housing for people. That's kind of what's needed. Like the actual building just isn't needed anymore. Um, and then also social trends are running against the movie theater. So people always, adult filmmakers keep forgetting that a big part of the business of movie theaters is families with kids and teenagers with nothing else to do.
and you
And
mean adults making movies for adults, not adult filmmakers? Because
true,
we have had
yes, yeah.
some adult film stars on the podcast, different
Oh,
industry.
interesting.
We could talk about that trend as well, but yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there used to be a habitual audience that would just hang out at the theater when there was nothing else to do, and that audience went
That
to
was me in high school.
yeah,
Same.
yeah.
Yeah.
People would just they had a couple hours to kill, so they'd go see a movie. You had
Or two
regulars
sometimes,
at,
yeah.
yeah, at the movie theater, and first Netflix and then our smartphone algorithms took that audience away.
Mhm.
And then kids these days just don't have as much freedom as we did growing up, and we didn't have as much freedom as Generation X did growing up. So kids these days are scheduled within an inch of their lives. Every moment's accounted for. And also, here's
And
a
cost of living, I mean, the tickets are more expensive now than they've ever been. Me
right.
and Jake have a dining theater we go to in the Springs, and um, because they make most of their money, I think they have like a bar and arcade attached to it. I think
Mhm.
it's the same business technically. It's like the same building, and they have on the menu, alcohol, beverages, and foods. I think most of their profit comes from that. So tickets are really cheap, which is great. But I think that's the exception, not the norm, for sure.
Right. Yeah, you have to subsidize cheap tickets now. Quentin Tarantino was talking about this the other day, where he said movie theater prices are just too expensive. Like the average person has can't afford it anymore. And I haven't seen a movie in prime time for over a decade. I think I
Yeah.
went on a date and each ticket was $20. This is back in like
Yes.
2009. And I was like, holy crap! Like this is more expensive than the food. Like
Yeah.
I could, yeah, I'll reallocate the spending. Um, yeah, and the kids just so federal car seat regulations you wouldn't think have an impact on the movie business, but so now every kid under the age of 8 needs their own car seat, which means if you have more than 2 kids, you have to buy a 3-row car, which is expensive. So that means because all these movie theaters you have to drive to them, means decreased family sizes for one, which less customers for the movie theater, and then it just makes the whole evening that much harder because you got to get the kids into, you got to buy the car seats, you got to get the kids into the car seats. It's just more of a chore for families than it used to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then the teenage audience, just they're off doing their homework or being overscheduled to something. Uh, yeah, and we're just kind of less collective than we used to be. The vibes are now just like leave me alone so I can hang out on my social media and be with people just like me. And I want to see my own biases and interests reflected back to me by my technology. And
Well,
attention
one thing.
spans.
Oh,
Mhm.
sorry.
Oh,
No, keep going,
attention
please.
spans have gotten shorter and shorter. Like there's a whole generation trained on TikTok where they expect everything in 2 minutes. You know, uh, and so trying to get them to sit through a 120-minute movie, like they literally might not be interested in that. They're like, what? This is so long. Uh, yeah, just every technological and social trend is just going against strangers, leaving their house to a big empty room and watching a movie together.
One thing that I also noticed, I was seeing a girl for some time who had children. Her oldest was turned 8 at the time, and her youngest had turned 5. So the older boy, he only had, and this, mind you, was maybe 3 years ago. So he only had, we'll say, 5 years old is when you start really making the memories and friends and play dates and things like that. He he only had until he was 5 before the pandemic started. And then the young
Oh,
girl, she was infantile when the pandemic started and it went on. I mean, her only experience going to school, if she even did go to school, was wearing a mask and the distancing and the
Hmm.
everything was on altered time frames and everything was just so different that I feel like young kids, like my thing, I loved seeing the movies when 3D movies were all the rave. Like, man, you couldn't keep me out of whatever theater it was. But they just don't have that push anymore because it wasn't a part of their everyday life. Leaving the house wasn't even a thing, let
yeah.
alone going and sitting somewhere with a big group of people in a confined space for an extended period of time when all these little kids are used to is being at home all day long. Or if they do
Hmm.
have friends come over, everybody goes to one person's house or this person's house, or we meet at the playground, hopefully, but more often than not. Again, like you were saying, that push towards social media and technology is I want to hang out with my friends. Let's jump on Minecraft. You know, I want to hang on with my friends. Let's see who is playing on this game or who is online right now for me to send a message to.
Yeah.
That that social aspect of, hey, you bored? Yeah, I'm bored. You got anything to do? No. You want to go see a movie? Sure. That I think that's just missed on this younger generation entirely, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. No, they won't know what it's like to be bored till they've graduated from college, you know. And even then,
Mm-hmm.
they're just so used to entertainment on demand in their pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the algorithm serving them up something from their friends, like they always have novelty on demand, and it's bad for the artistic side because your subconscious uses boredom to know when it's time to like. It kind of says to itself, "Okay, I'm safe. I'm gonna do this thing below your conscious threshold." So that's how you get like a lot of creative problem solving comes from being
Mm-hmm.
bored. You know, just going for a walk or just sitting there on the
Mhm.
side of the hill, just thinking about stuff. You know, um,
That's a good point. And actually, I have a kind of, it's more philosophical than trending, but for John and Jake, I think Jake's point's really good about how communication and socializing is so streamlined and like catered to what every individual group wants that it is more alluring than like what I liked about the theater when I did go with friends. I was someone who went a lot on my own because, but when you go with friends, like there's kind of meeting up and then before the movie talking about what you're expecting and then afterwards dissecting the movie. And I thought that was really invaluable. Do you think that the new uh trend of like playing a video game together or maybe even watching a movie at home on your own and then talking about it is the same or different or better or worse? I'm curious what you both think about that.
One thing that I just have a bit of a pet peeve of, if you will, is I mean, you'll see a lot of the memes and parodies of it on TV, but like, I'm gonna watch a reaction video of a reaction video to this guy opening this toy. Like, it's so far detached from your actual personal experience that I feel like, okay, movie A is coming out. Okay, you, myself, John would be like, all right, let's go see it and form our own opinion of it. Whereas pop culture, if you will, would say, the critics said it was good. So it's a good movie. Okay, cool. And just leave it at that. Or they said it was bad. I'm not gonna even watch it. Like there's not enough of a push for that bored creativity, that bored discovery. Like, you know what? I've got an hour and a half to kill. Why don't I just watch this movie myself instead of 13 reaction videos to it?
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and you're kind of getting at something else too, where like some used to be like keeping information in a social way was expensive because it was paper books. You can only print so many paper books. They take up space. You have to store them somewhere secure. So that's why we have libraries, you know, and the public library was a resource so that the public would have access to information instead of it being locked up in like a church or a monastery. So that's how it was for hundreds of years. And then we invented hard drives and networking. And all of a sudden, like any small interest segment can have its own public library, its own body, actual storage of knowledge. So that instead of knowledge being something only elites can keep, every group can have as much knowledge as it wants. And then that got put online, and that became Twitter and social networking. I mean, like Wikipedia, it's an online encyclopedia anyone can edit. But what this does is that it turns every tiny niche into a religion. It's like people who love the fish. It used to be that they could go fishing themselves, their own little friend group. And if they had cable, maybe there's one cable channel for fishing, and they could read a bunch of magazines about it. But now you can have fishing influencers with strong opinions about no, this is the proper way to catch bass. And then the next fishing influencer is like, no, we don't do it that way. We face left when we cast. And the people who face right, well, they're subhuman, evil devil spawn who just are destroying nature and are against God's will for how to catch fish. Yeah, and like and the way to get attention online is to stir up trouble and controversy. Like your power online is related to how much attention you can get. Like Trump figured this out first. Like we live in this post-information economy where because information is flooding the world, we have information abundance, and everybody who's publishing information needs viewers. So what's valuable is the ability to get viewers, not the actual quality of the information. So like Lauren Boebert is trying to
Is that how you say her last name?
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying Boebert.
Yeah, I think it's either way. I guess I should say Boebert. But she's trying to move from the West Slope.
She's trying to rebrand to be like Stephen Colbert, and it's not working. No,
yeah. Well, she's trying to move out here to the Front Range, to the Greeley district, and she's winning the primary, even though she really didn't have any connection to the voters, just because she's kept her name in the headlines, and she knows how to get attention. Yeah, she became a household name through acting badly, but that wasn't the point. The only publicity is the only bad publicity is no publicity.
Correct.
Yeah. And so
I can see a lot of potential down, like dangers to society from that. That's frightening.
Right. So it's bad if you're a movie producer who wants to create a following for their movie, because you have all these religious audiences that will first test your movie for values. And so you'll have some of the more curious, like early adopters from whatever segment, like feminists. Feminists will watch your movie and they'll be like, this movie is anti-feminist because of this situation. So ladies, you shouldn't watch this movie. It's retrograde to watch this movie. Or you could have another sect come at your movie and be like, oh, no, this movie is not Christian at all because of this particular scene and the relationship these characters have. You have this really blasphemous scene, so I hate your movie too. And they'll take their cues from their friends online without even ever seeing your movie, and taking the time to judge your movie for themselves.
Well, that makes it hard, like you're saying, because you don't want to offend any groups that are going to be swayed by the assessment of the movie before seeing it. But if you're not getting publicity for being controversial and you're not breaking through the noise of so much information, it's like, how do you walk that tightrope of, okay, I need to be interesting and relevant, but not divisive? I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible, because the groups want to fight with each other, and they'll hate your movie just because one of the other groups likes your movie. That's what
I think the best example is the new Star Wars show that came out yesterday, The Acolyte. Because they were concerned about review bombing, they like shut it down till the show came out, and like the average audience score is really low, but the number of people who tuned in and watched all of the episodes full runtime, biggest Disney Plus release all year. I loved it as a Star Wars fan. I was like, a murder mystery with Jedi, this is fucking awesome. I love it. And so I loved it, and everyone who's trash talked it either has the tiniest little nitpicks of like random things that I didn't notice because I was enjoying the story, or they were talking bad about it before they saw it. And I'm like, all right, you can tell us what your real problem was, And so it's annoying because I'm like, why don't we just watch it and then talk about the quality of the storytelling or how the characters are written? Like, it's frustrating.
Right. Like, why don't we judge it on its actual substance instead of like what someone else said about it, and who likes it? Like, the audience has just gotten a little too smart and a little too meta about itself,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, we can't go watch this movie because that gives the other team a leg up in the popularity contest. And it's like, dude, it's a movie, like you need to get over
Hmm.
yourself a bit.
Well, even with like everything being so strongly pushed towards social media, a clip of a movie will get released or something like that, or the trailer, for example. And, Group A will find something that they don't like with even that small piece of a much grander project and nitpick that to death to the point where the movie's been shot down before it even had a chance to ever take flight because they decided to release the wrong clip because they didn't have the context. And there's it seems like from what I've seen, everybody is looking for like it's got to be great straight out the gate. I can't give you a second to waste my time. And then if you don't pass my seconds worth of time that I've allotted you, then I'm going to turn to the masses and see if I should give you a second opinion. If they say no, then oh well. And it's it's frustrating. I've seen people, I mean, I'm on social media, so for example, like before Fall Guy, the movie that Josh and I saw was the latest release of the Kong Godzilla universe,
Hmm.
which I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, but I purposely didn't read any sort of feedback whatsoever, whether it was on a clip or a trailer or anything, because I knew it was going to be just that. Oh, you can't watch this because it's so deep into this, and you can't do that. It's a big lizard fighting a big gorilla, and then they make friends. Come on, guys, really? Does it
Yeah, just
does
go have
does
fun.
it? Yeah,
Hmm.
but you'll spend 2 hours sat on your toilet watching somebody else play a video game.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm. It's it's what people call entertainment nowadays is askew, it seems. It's not entertaining to watch a movie, it's more entertaining to
It's the democratization of content creation.
yeah,
Like, people want
yeah.
content. They don't want cinema. And by cinema, I mean like what we think of as movies, like characters that don't know they're in a movie, like nice photography, like a plot, genre. People just want content that provides a quick, easy hit of emotion and novelty.
Hmm.
So like cat videos are always, infinitely popular. Um,
It's my main bread and butter on TikTok. Guilty as charged.
yeah, I mean TikTok, like the 2 minute time limit, and like all TikTok is a content machine. I mean, I guess you could try to chop your movie into 62-minute parts and try and get a fan base that way, but like Jake said, something you get taken out of context, it'd blow back on you.
Hmm.
Like,
I
as a
have seen a
culture,
few. I have seen a few. They call them like 5 second films, and of course they're almost always comedic. But writing that way and being funny is so hard, and it's so rare to see a good one of that. Like that is an art form, but that's definitely the exception, not the norm for like actual storytelling. Because
yeah,
TikTok is, I think the average video is like just under a minute, but they have increased their time limits lately. And I mean, like, unless a video is really well done or really informative and gripping, if it's longer than 2 or 3 minutes, I'm out. Like, I just can't when I'm in TikTok mode, you know?
Hmm.
So
yeah, the
it's, yeah,
TikTok audience is tough. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like our culture overall is kind of regressing. Like, we're not able to, this is kind of a strange analogy, but we can't make enough artillery shells for Ukraine because we got rid of our industry. Well, cinema is an industry, and we can't accumulate enough paying audiences with enough leverage for filmmakers to extract value out of that audience because um, our information technology transfers value away from value creators to the consumers. This happened first with the music industry, where used to be you had to buy physical media. So they had the
right.
leverage to, you can't play the CD or record without buying it. So that was how the labels made their money, and the labels would turn around and pay artists. And then um, information technology, like easily mass marketed adoption of CD, rewritable CDs. You know, you can copy a disc at home, and then you get Napster, and all of a sudden the leverage of the artists and their managers gets evaporated, and we saw this music industry just go into this tailspin or nosedive that it's never recovered from. You know, the music industry today is one person, and that's Taylor Swift, and there's not much else out there.
Well, it seems like to actually be able to make a sustainable income as a musician, you have to be doing live shows is really the only way to like, or go viral on TikTok.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you'll get discovered on TikTok or YouTube, so you can tour. And that's,
right.
You know, even Taylor Swift has to tour all the time because that's how she makes her money.
But let me put this out there. So one thing that you had mentioned is like the monopolization of it. I don't see, and with the pricing of a movie ticket, I mean, luckily, I can, you know, afford my own subscriptions and watch other people's subscriptions when available and whatnot. But I sent Josh a photo of the breakdown of like if you were to have Hulu with no ads, Disney Plus with no ads, Netflix with ads, something like that, you know, some sort of combination of all the streaming services, you're paying more now than our parents would have paid for cable.
Even adjusting
And
for
so,
inflation. Yeah.
And you want me to then go out of my way after spending X amount of dollars for my creature comforts at home to go watch another product that you have produced, when if I'm just patient and I wait 3 weeks, I can then see it at home on the same service that I already paid for. So it kind of begs the question of like, why would I even go out of my way to go there? Like the Taylor Swift tour, the reason that got a reaction out of me is that's like the biggest headline on my smart TV right now is click here to watch the Taylor Swift tour recording. Then why would I have paid, you know, hundreds of dollars to go see it and
Thousands for some of those tickets.
yeah, get kicked and spit on and all the smells and the other like annoyances that
Standing
come
for
with
6
it
hours. Yeah.
when I can wait a few weeks. You know, it's a musician, so it's not like, you know, the content is going to be spoiled. Once she puts the song out, the song is out. There's no going back. You know, a movie can be spoiled to an extent, but even then you can still watch the movie even if you know how it ends. But why would I go out of my way to pay extra when I'm already paying for patience? I've got an Amazon subscription that I pay monthly for. My Audible subscription that I pay monthly for. Yet I still have to watch 2 minutes worth of ads every 5 minutes when I'm watching Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like I already paid over $100 for it.
Yeah. So, but then it's like, okay, well, while you're doing that, hey, do you want to buy the newest version of the Alexa? Fuck you. No, I don't want to buy the newest version of Alexa. I don't want to watch ads. Can you just give me that? No, buy a new product and then maybe we'll give you a try. It's all just a cash grab and it's not at all focused on the consumer anymore. And then it's hard. I see it, but then it's also hard to be kind of upset or blame the consumer because I know unless it's something I really want to see, I'm gonna wait. I already pay for all the subscription services anyway. And if I want to run to the bathroom for a second, I like having that luxury. I don't want to pay $30 to hold my bladder. It just those little, like I say, creature comforts that come with it that make I don't know if I'll ever go to another concert again unless it's like really worth my while. Because concert tickets, even to I get it, just like that industry we're talking about, but I can't justify paying almost $100 for a ticket that's going to put me almost a mile away from the stage, and I have to stand on my own 2 feet the entire time. Yeah, the push is just so much for go broke or go home.
And I'd rather go home.
Yeah, it's sort of this feedback loop where because they're not getting subsidized through record sales. They have to charge out the nose for live events, and then
Mm-hmm.
like that in and of itself also alienates the audience and drives them back towards record sales and gives the concert industry kind of a bad name for overpricing. Part of it too is the Justice Department announced that antitrust investigation into Ticketmaster and Live Nation
Yeah.
for monopolizing all the venues. Like they literally pretty much bought up any worthwhile
Mm-hmm.
venue is owned by one or the other, and so they slap on all those ticket fees. There's like a fee for processing the other fees, you know,
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
and
There truly is. There's a processing fee, which is ridiculous. When I input all the information myself,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
there's a program somebody made probably a year ago, years ago at this point. That, yeah, sorry, but I really like where you're going with that one. I agree wholeheartedly. It's ridiculous.
hmm yeah, and so I mean, consumers are kind of winning because they get content more and more cheaply, but they're also going to lose in the long run because the creators are the ones really losing. Like first was the music industry where they have no leverage to charge for their product anymore. And I think the visual side knew this was coming eventually. Like it was just going to happen, and they did pretty well holding off the collapse till about this year. So it's just they got to find a way to, and the audience is going to hate it, but they need leverage again to figure out how to charge a premium for their product. And with
Yeah.
live sports, you can do that easier because you have like the event is not a predetermined outcome. And that's why
Exactly.
sports are so valuable. You know, people will pay
Mm-hmm.
to go to sports, to watch sports, and that kind of subsidizes the parts of the media that, the nerds like us like to watch, like Game of Thrones, Star Wars. For a long time, ESPN was the cash cow that held up Disney.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, Game of Thrones is one of the most watched shows of all time, but it was one of the least profitable. Same with Walking Dead. Those shows barely broke even, whereas The Big Bang Theory was insanely profitable because even though I don't like that show, enough people liked it, and it was so cheap because it's all in like 2 apartments, all sound stages, small cast, and those cast members were very well compensated in the later seasons. But
mhm.
yeah.
Well, I
Well,
saw an interest. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, I was gonna say I want to hear your point. And then I have like kind of a 2-part question for John based on everything we've discussed here. But what's your point first?
So with that, I saw some internet posting that said we need to go back to filler episodes, because I
Oh
think like the Monarch series, for example, that you and I watched, it was great. We were hooked. We wanted to watch every episode like as quick as we could. But then again, that's still an hour, 15 minutes maybe per episode, maybe 55 minutes, something around that hour marker,
yeah,
where like John was saying, people want that content, that quick hit real quick. I mean, the number of people that I ask, hey, what do you watch? YouTube. YouTube. Oh yeah, well I just watched those 20-minute videos on, that's it. It's the
mm,
quick, I can dedicate this much time plus this much attention to get this much viewing time. And I think if episodes were back to 20 minutes, you know, that would be, I hate to say it, but an easier way to spoon feed good TV and good content without gorging down the consumer's throat, so to speak. Because I could still binge 3 episodes of a 20-minute show, or for somebody who doesn't have that attention span or just that drive, they can still enjoy one episode and be done with that, move on to the next thing, and come back, and rather than fall off with it because I don't feel like watching 30 hours worth of TV show for one season or 3 hours of a movie.
I have a lot of feelings about that, but I want to hear John's opinion because we've talked about runtime of episodes on TV before. So, John, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with Jake on this. Like, try to shorter is usually better. There are a few stories where, like a 1 hour episode is nice, but I think like forcing creators to stick to a certain short amount of time, because for years the broadcast standard was 28 minutes for a half-hour block, 52
Hmm.
minutes for 1 hour block. I think it got shorter the longer time went on. So now it's like 22 minutes for a half
I believe
hour.
so.
Yeah, and 22 minutes is just about right to like dip your toes into a story and then get out, move on. Like even when I watch the original Star Trek series, like they feel long because they're 10 minutes longer than Deep Space Nine and Next Generation, which
Yeah.
are 42 minutes each. And part of it is like once culture speeds up, your brain can't, it's painful to go slow again. Like when you watch older shows, older movies, like if you watch Alien, the original Alien, and they've got these really nice slow tracking shots when they're walking up to the ship, and there's time to drink in the atmosphere. I mean, you definitely lose something when you gotta be moving along all the time.
Yeah.
And now if you're gonna
Hmm.
release an Alien movie today, it's just gonna be like chest bursters from the first minute in to the last minute out. Just action all the time. You gotta.
Romulus does look pretty cool though. But I
Hmm.
see what you're saying. Yeah, it's and that I don't know, it's
Yeah, it's
Like, what's
like now
Michael Bay
that.
doing? He'd
oh
be great
gosh.
right now. All his explosions, like now would be his time to shine. He was a couple years too early.
Yeah, the
I'm
audience.
curious though, how did last year Barbie and Oppenheimer work around that? Because both those movies overperformed expectations at the box office, and Oppenheimer was super long. And Barbie was for that genre pretty long too for its runtime.
Yeah, I didn't actually see either of the
Oh,
Barbenheimers. Can't give you
oh,
like a good answer
I
about
liked
that.
both of them a lot. Um,
Hmm.
I had very different feelings walking out of both, but I enjoyed both of them in different ways. And
I would
I've
hope you
talked
had
about
different
this.
feelings.
Yeah, but I actually think Barbie's the better of the two movies. I think if you had asked me to make a movie about a toy line and explore all of the big nebulous tangential political and social issues around that toy, that would be much more daunting to do that and make it entertaining as opposed to a biopic of a complicated person from a controversial time in history telling his story in a neutral, objective way. The Oppenheimer seems like an easier thing to tackle. I think both movies were incredibly well done, but Barbie was better done in my opinion because it was such a harder task to complete. And I found the movie incredibly entertaining and fun, so I really liked it. But
Nice,
um,
nice.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it is a
newer.
weird contrast to this year, just 1 year difference. Where, I mean, even the movies that got you know shadowed completely by those two movies, like the Mission Impossible 10 or whatever came out, and the people like the producers and Tom Cruise were like, this is great for cinema, go see Barbenheimer and maybe our movie too. Like, how did it change so quick from last year to this year?
Yeah, it just makes me wonder why Furiosa couldn't attract the same audience as Barbie. And I
Yeah,
think there's a lot of reasons for that. Um,
like I think the Furiosa is also rated R and Barbie was PG 13, so I think
True,
the
true.
accessibility of viewers was a big part in that. But
Yeah.
also with Barbie it was not a standalone because there is the toy line that it was had the name recognition. But with Mad Max, I feel like, I don't know, like it's not that popular of a franchise. I know some people who are really hardcore about Fury Road. I liked that movie, but I saw it once and like I was like, that was really cool, but I haven't seen it again since then.
Hmm.
So I don't think a lot of people were like, well, I have to go see a prequel to Fury Road.
Hmm. Yeah, it kind of punched. I read an article, really good article, analyzing this. That it actually, like, it got all the awards for 2015, but actually didn't make all that much money, especially
Yeah.
given its budget. Like, I think it only made like 153 in the theaters, and it wasn't
And
even
it
in the
was
top
probably
10.
cost around that, I'd imagine, to make, because that thing had so many practical effects that were probably very
Hmm.
expensive.
Yeah, like they broke even. The producers got their money back, and then they probably made a nice profit on cable and ancillary streams. But
Yeah.
yeah, that movie was more of an artistic than commercial success.
Yeah.
And part of the reason was that there was a lawsuit between George Miller and Warner Brothers
Oh, I didn't know that.
about performance because Warner Brothers, the contract called for a PG-13 movie and ended up being R.
Oh.
Mm.
Weren't
And
all the previous Mad Max movie? I haven't seen the old ones from like the 70s and 80s. Were those all rated R?
oh, I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Tell us in the comments, internet.
So
I like
but
the idea of those, but I don't want to go back and support Mel Gibson, so I haven't watched them. But
yeah. But that
I think
delayed.
that might have part of it. Oh, go ahead, tell it.
Oh yeah, delayed Furiosa by like 3 or 4 years. And George Miller went and did another movie that bombed really hard. It had a $60 million budget. It's like 3,000 Years of Longing,
I
and
haven't
I
even
didn't
heard of
heard
it.
of it. Like I was doing a
Really?
little
Okay.
Wikipedia reading, and I was like, I did not remember this coming out at all. So that's how hard it bombed. Is like worldwide, it only made $20 million worldwide,
Yikes!
on a $60 million budget. So and yeah, he should have spent more time on Furiosa. Um, and I feel like Furiosa is kind of caught between the more conservative male fans of the genre who just want action, And there was a time and place in the 2010s where they were willing to take a chance on a female figure. And now, like I said, they've become more religious about it. And like if they feel if this female figure is going to offend their values, or they feel like they're being condescended to by the industry, they're going to stay home. And then the movie is too action and too violent to bring in the Barbie crowd, the girly girls who want a more feminine experience. And so it just sort of ended up caught in this no person's land, um, where neither side was like, yeah, that's not really for me,
Hmm.
or both sides were like that. But anyway, I got a question for you two. It's like,
Mhm.
if you could, would you take the internet back to Memorial Day 1998? Because Napster went online June 1st, 1998. So would you take the culture industry back to the 90s if you could? Like your benevolent dictator.
Well, I would have been two,
Mhm.
I was
so
7.
I don't think I would have very much opinion on it. Um, if I can spin that a little, I don't know. I think I liked the direction that the '90s movies were going in. Like, let's just try to like go as balls to the wall as we can. We'll do as much CGI as we have the technology for the time being, and then we'll do the rest live action. But like, as silly as they were, the Ninja Turtle movies were some of my favorites, just because I got to see like my favorite little superheroes, my favorite little toys come to life. So to bring it to modern day, I think that's kind of why the Barbie movie did so well, is because I mean everybody knows Barbie. Little boys grew up, Barbies are for girls, and little girls growing up, Barbies are for us. I think seeing that on the mainstream or on the big screen was very appealing to multiple audiences. And so I think we should go back and remake all of the 90s flops now. That's where I'm getting at with that. I think we should go back to where we were getting to in the 90s and pick up where we left off.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I like that. I like that solution. Just go back all the movies that didn't work back then because of the VFX and stuff. Just remake them now
Mm-hmm.
and have fun with it. That's
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like an example of that. That like a movie I saw that I was like, everybody's gonna love this movie, and then nothing happened. Back then. Shoot,
We
was
all
like,
thought it's not the 90s, it's more 2000s, but the Shark Boy and Lava Girl was supposed to be like that whole franchise. Like I remember there was so much publicity for it and it was supposed to be so cool. They were going to be the new superhero team, and I watched the movie when I was younger and thought it was great, but I saw it in like a waiting room or something now and I was like they they literally just took George Lopez's face on a webcam call and threw him onto a robot, and he was the bad guy.
That's funny. I've
mhm.
never
Come
was that
on.
Robert Rodriguez who did that? Was he trying to kind of make a new Spy Kids? Because that franchise took off more than a lot of people expected it to.
Yes, it was around that time frame. And
I think it was just because I was the first Spy Kids came out when I was right at the right age to like it, and I liked it a lot. I liked the sequel, and then as I got older, I saw the third one and the ones after, and I was like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like Shark Boy and Lava Girl was another attempt to replicate that for the people younger than me, like my sister's generation, which my sister's the same age as you, and it just didn't work
Yeah.
the same way. Like they struck
Mm-mm.
gold once and then they missed it the second time around. But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
I
hard to update lightning in a bottle.
yeah. Well, Jake, your answer is better than mine because to answer John's question, I was actually gonna ask John, what do you think we should do about this? Because there are parts of modern internet culture that I really like. I like being able to hear other people's perspectives. I feel that being online, I've grown a lot more as a person and learned to see things from multiple different viewpoints. And I like that people are being conscious of things and holding people accountable. But at the same time, the attention span concerns me. The cost of living and just all of the options we have at home concerns me. So like the music industry, like we've talked about, is struggling, and it is all with these live events that a lot of people don't like the things about it which are necessary to keeping that industry afloat. How does the film industry slash the TV industry avoid the same pitfalls, or like what are ways it could go that would be ideal for people who like good cinema and also work in the industry? Like, what are your thoughts on where it could go?
Yeah, I mean, so there are days I feel nostalgic for the time that I never experienced, which is the pre-cable broadcast TV world, where Walter Cronkite was the voice of God, because there's only four TV channels, and everybody knew what was on. And in a way, I think it did make the democracy stronger because everyone's on the same page. Um,
I don't
like
know, but then
everybody.
wouldn't some voices be stifled though if you have only four decision makers trying to compete for everyone's attention? Wouldn't there be a lot of marginalized voices in that? Like,
Oh, for sure. Like that was why people were unhappy with it, was that it was easier to get a mainstream formed. It was kind of easier for the elites to form a consensus and steer it. And now I think we've gone unintentionally too far the other way, where it's just impossible to form a consensus because everybody's got a following, everybody's got an opinion, and they're all fighting for attention all the time. And it's a little too democratized. No one can steer the ship. It's like, uh, you know, the analogy with the boat, or maybe just too many cooks in the kitchen, where
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
everybody's wants their turn. There's not enough of a way to have for everybody to have their turn steering the ship or running the kitchen. It's just all chaos all the time, and it
yeah,
also allows the audience to withdraw from each other, because when you have the really thick mainstream, you can't get away from it. Like whatever's popular at the time, like it's kind of put in your face because that's all there is. And now, when everybody's a little niche to themselves, we can all just opt out from each other by withdrawing into our little niche.
interesting.
So it's sort of like, instead of a public fabric of opinions, culture, we're all just going into our own little cave, and keeping our own individual lights under a bushel. Basically, we
What
can
would
all
be
withdraw
some?
to our own comfort zones and
Yeah,
not have to. It's just more comfortable.
I wonder how could we find a balance though, because I totally see what you're saying that now there's too many voices, too many niches, and it's too easy to go into an echo chamber where you're only seeing things that kind of confirm your worldview. But then in the past, it was what you watch is within a certain confined viewpoint and there's no alternatives. I kind of would want a middle ground. I don't know,
Yeah,
like
and I
how
feel
does
like it's just sort of like, well, how many? If we're gonna have cable channels, how many is too many? Like, do we want to go back to the '80s where we got MTV for the kids? Um, there were certain interests that were represented. Like, should we not get nichier than the Food Channel, or is that too nichey? Um, it's like we want more than three channels, but do we want 6, 12, 18? There's not really a good answer to it. And so the technologists, the engineers just keep giving us more and more channels, which just results in more and more audience fragmentation and then
mm,
cultural fragmentation too. And
It's interesting.
eventually, oh, yeah, keep going.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Food Network versus like like you had said earlier, like the fishing, there was a fishing channel, like one channel. I think that would be an interesting way to go about it rather than making so much of the stigma. Like if you don't subscribe to this specific media, that's you taking a stance. I miss the good old days of just it's TV and I just want to watch something, or it's a movie and I just want to watch something and then not think deeper than what is being shown right in front of me. Because everything is obviously open for interpretation, but I think that's where the disconnect began, was when we started over interpreting things. I think
Hmm.
we should be able to just watch the Food Network, for example, because I want to see good food cooked, not because, Gordon Ramsay specifically has this show that he is hosting because I'll watch him, the next guy, because my goal is just to watch something about food. I think if we could get almost, if we could come back up to the surface a little bit as far as the the content we consume and remembering that it is just that, it's just entertainment content, that would that could help a bit, but
Yeah, I
I
guess
don't
I'm just too much of a intellectual to be like, it's never just about entertainment, because what people find
know.
entertaining comes from their background and their values and their goals in life, who their friends are, which is in turn is also influenced by policy decisions. Um, so yeah, it can never just be, this is just neutral entertainment, that is disconnected from any larger cultural political picture. Especially in a democracy where the people make their own rules, and we're just making this up as we go along. That's kind of the horrifying truth of it is, like it's actually all a bunch of amateurs in Congress. Like it is the rule of the people. There is no enlightened ubermensches to come down and save us.
Which
So
I think is better. I don't. Yeah, I think I'd rather have chaos that's a little more. I don't know. Like in the Expanse books, they like the later books, they really get into. There's a guy who comes in and kind of takes over the colonized worlds of humanity, and he's like a very benevolent dictator. But a lot of the characters are like, he's still a dictator. Like we're gonna stand up to this guy, and it's an interesting discussion of that. So
mhm. Yeah, there's
but
something to
with
be said
I,
for taking responsibility for, like, yeah, it's our democratic chaos. So just, let us live in our chaos.
yeah.
That's what, like, we're happy with that. It's sort of like, um, I don't know, when your parents try, you're like, you have to clean your room. Why? Well, it's because this is my house and it's my rules. And then, like, the first thing you do when you get your own apartment is just like, let it go for 2 weeks. I was like that. It's like, finally, it's my messy room. No one can make me clean up.
And I guess this has been a great discussion. There's so many awesome things to think about. I think that I do kind of like the chaos because I like variety, because then out of that giant pool of things, I can pick what appeals to me and then watch things that are going to resonate the most with me. But how do the people who make the big mess of content stay afloat and stay able to continue producing quality stuff with having that kind of chaos? You know what I mean? Like, how are, 'cause I know so many filmmakers, like, I saw this during the pandemic, especially when like theaters were shut down for safety concerns, and there were still directors being like, well, I made my movie for the theater, please go see it in the theater. And it's like, like I'd like that personally, but it was kind of almost putting art above public safety, and I think that alienated a lot of people too, to okay, I'll just watch this at home, like I don't care. So how can like where can the film industry go to keep putting good stuff out while still appealing to this kind of societal need for a big variety of content? That was a very
Yeah.
rambling question. I apologize, but
Well, to your rambly question, I have a very short and smart ass answer, which is there's this tiny town in Canada called Flin Flon. It's the northernmost inhabited town of any size. The reason
really,
I say that is because they need to go someplace cheaper, because If you can't access a big audience as a filmmaker, you got to keep your expenses lower. And so that means you need to move to places where there's a lower cost of living. So you got to move out of LA. You might even have to move out of the mainland US altogether, because there's no haven from the expense right now anywhere. Like it's expensive in the cities, it's expensive in the rural areas. So in 2017, I was thinking about moving to LA, and my mom looked at the rents. She was like, "No, I'm not going to help you move there. It's too expensive." And now, like, cost of living in Colorado on a rent basis actually exceeds the cost of living in LA. Um,
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah, well, Boulder County is really bad
Yeah.
for, and so like artists they do need a shelter from capitalism to be able to create. And like that shelter might not even be in North America anymore. Maybe you got to go to, like, you have to clear your own patch out of the jungle in Guatemala and live there and take the risks with living in Guatemala. And like my friend he's in Thailand. He sent me some pics over WhatsApp. He was going on and on about how cheap Thailand is, like restaurant quality meals for $12 a head. Um, just add like all the labor and services you could possibly want for like a tenth of the price in the US. And when I went to American Film Market, there's this guy from the Dominican Republic offering me a free production, because some sort of combination of low cost of living and government subsidies to try and start up the film industry meant that he had enough backing to do things for free.
Wow.
Could have taken him up on it, come up with a project in hindsight. But yeah, it's just, unfortunately, I think the answer to your question, how you solve the riddle, is low cost of living. That's why the artists used to live in the lofts in the industrial warehouses, abandoned warehouses in the inner city, was the stereotypical artist hangout, because it cost nothing. Like some of those artists would squat for free for years, because the lack of information of the real estate industry back then meant that you could camp out on a deal like that for years. And now we have Zillow, and you can call up any discrepancies in price that are advantageous to consumers are discovered immediately. There's no place to hide anymore from high real estate values. So basically, in order to still make a profit with smaller audiences, you need cheaper inputs, which includes labor. And to have cheaper labor, you need cheaper cost of living.
So we got to ditch capitalism and give socialism a good college try. I agree.
Yes. for the workers.
Yes. Jake, what are your thoughts on this? I guess you froze for a second, and I was like, your cooling system is too efficient in the tub there. You're literally frozen.
No. I don't. I'm not sure exactly. I don't necessarily see it as some. I don't necessarily look towards the political route personally. I look more from just the entertainment standpoint of it, and I think it needs to be less of a targeted audience and more of a targeted message. I think if content creators, I don't even want to say content creators, I'm going to say filmmakers, TV like makers, things like that, instead of trying to get, we want this market, this market, and this market, we got to make sure they like it. I just make a solid project and just throw that out there. Don't necessarily go after, it's the money grab and the likes grab that I think has taken a lot of substance out of filmmaking and music and just the entertainment industry is not even so much the entertainment industry, it's just a matter of popularity farming at this point. And I think honestly that's kind of it. I don't really have any way, I don't know how to resolve that. I just think that's the issue. If we could get back to just making good quality things for, I don't want necessarily $3 billion in the box office, but I do want, the most award-winning actors, or I want my film to have the most awards won for it. that sort of thing. Not necessarily. I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling now.
Well, you have an interesting point where a lot of fan favorites and just good art comes from the artist being authentic and making a personal project in the sense that they're making the movie they want to see. Like that's where Star Wars came from,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Exactly.
other good movies too. And I think like still like 7 out of 10 of those are going to be weird and terrible movies.
Mhm.
You know, and like there used to be the standard for directors used to be one for me, one for them. And so they do a personal movie and then they go do the big blockbuster that's a little more formulaic, more meant to make money. And then they take
Yeah.
the money from that and they make one for them that may do well, may not, but that's what they want to see. And
Yeah.
now, yeah, I think everything's financialized. Like finance took over culture.
Hmm.
So now they're just trying to make the commercial movies all the time, you know. And
Hmm.
same thing with content creators. They get they get paid to be popular, so they're just gonna copy relentlessly what's popular, and they don't really care about their own authentic voice anymore. You know, like it's
No.
hard to keep going to it when you got to do 4 TikToks a day. It's like I need something new to say, you know that, but
Yeah.
that's like
Hmm.
authentic to yourself. And some people have that talent, you know, like some people have the ability to just talk out of the in an improvised way and still have it be authentic to themselves. But other people are they're like, crap, I got to fill this content hole, so I'm just gonna jump on what's trendy, what's popular, you know.
What's
Hmm.
divisive because that draws in people. Like I've been trying to promote my books on TikTok, and I'm usually like, yeah, just read my book, you might like it. And like other people are like criticizing other people's books or like getting into big arguments, and they're the ones that pull in a bigger audience. And I'm like, I don't want to. So
Yeah,
No.
somehow, like for those of us that don't like the campus intellectual atmosphere, you know, of constant fighting and tearing each other down. Well, you can't get away from it. Like it escaped from campus, and because of the internet, we all live on campus culture now.
mm,
Like
Hmm.
it, but like it's the Soviet Russia joke where, you know, campus culture. You might not be interested in intellectual infighting, but intellectual infighting is interested in you.
mm, yeah, it's interesting how like it's so hard to talk about just movies and the trends in the industry, and it keeps ending up in society and technology and politics. So it's interesting how all those systems are so intertwined, you know.
Oh yeah, I think it's really fascinating the interplay, and it's changing faster than it used to. You know, I think like
Yeah.
with the Fury Road, it used to be you could wait 9 years for the sequel, and the culture would still kind of be in the same place where it was. Like the culture from 1995 to 2005 was still kind of the same culture, but now I
Yeah.
feel like the culture from 2015 to 2025 very different.
No. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like, I mean,
I
if you look
feel
at the old Star Wars movies, the original trilogy, there were many years in between those. It's weird because those all came out before I was born, but like even in retrospect for the prequels, those each had like 3 years in between,
mhm.
and that didn't feel weird to me at all. But now, if like they made a new Marvel movie and then waited like 3 years to follow up with anything, I'd be like, what's happening? Like the MCU's gone, I guess. You know, like it'd be super weird, and jarring.
Yeah, it's just the pace of the internet is literally every second there's something new. So you have to come up with a like MCU like production industry that just cranks things out every quarter just to stay in the conversation, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm of the mind that up until recently, the MCU managed to walk a very good balance between quality and quantity. For me personally, I feel like only the last couple movies started to fall down. Like since really Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Before that, I felt like all the movies were at least a solid 6 or 7 in my books. And to do
Hmm.
like 32 movies of that quality consistently, I was very impressed by. But
Yeah, yeah. Once they came out with the second Avengers Endgame, maybe they should have taken 4 or 5 years off. Because it's like they did what they were going to do. We defeated the big bad guy, and they're like, crap, we need to keep this, you know, industry going. So what do we do now? More of what worked before. And then
What I think for the movies, that's definitely true. Where like the post-Endgame movies, with a few exceptions, haven't been strong in my opinion. But the post-Endgame shows, where they explore the characters in a more nuanced way than they did for most of the MCU, those have really worked for me. I've really enjoyed. I mean, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision. Those have all been really solid. So, I think they should have almost focused on less movies and more TV shows. And I feel like they're not doing that now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
I
unfortunate
I
that
agree.
there is kind of a bias within narrative production towards movies have prestige and TV is for the masses, TV's lowbrow, which, Game of Thrones, I think definitely killed that
Yeah,
stigma, or should have. If anything, it's the other way now because it's easier to get a big budget for an epic TV show than it is for an indie film. And the audience too is getting trained to expect Game of Thrones level production values from regular TV. Whereas like your poor like indie filmmaker with 30 million bucks just can't do that kind of level.
right.
And
And
to what Josh was saying, I mean, you have a much better chance of getting me to wait a week between episodes than you do 7 years. Or was that? Yeah, 7 years between movies. I mean,
yeah,
it's the, like you were saying, John, everybody wants that immediate follow up. Give me something next. Give me something next. And I think TV would be the best way to do it. Make shorter episodes and more of them to give people that over a longer period of time fix to keep them hooked on it longer, so to speak. And then by the time that they've run out of this show, it's already been half a year. You've been working on the other half for the other half of the year, and then boom, it's right there again. That's the best way I see it working.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny how the game industry around like 2000 made a pact within the game industry that games would only be about 10, 12 hours long so that
Mm-hmm.
more different games could be played and more people would have a chance at the audience. Because
Wait,
in the
this is
90s,
Yeah.
for video games?
yeah, for video games, because you used to have these epic, like 100-hour games like Final Fantasy VI, I think. Games used to be a lot longer and a lot more in depth. And then they all agreed that, like, look, there's only so much time to be divided among all of us. We all want our 15 minutes of fame, so games should be 10 to 20 hours instead of 100 hours. And then also the boxes
Interesting.
themselves got smaller. Used to be in the 90s
Oh,
box was like kind of a short shoe box. It was like
oh yeah.
12. It was like, yeah, 8 by 11 box, about 1.5 inches deep. And then they went to like the 5-inch box format. It was basically just big enough to get the CD-ROM in there, so
Mm-hmm.
they can actually fit more of them onto the shelf.
That
So
makes
as a
sense.
yeah,
Hmm.
and so with just maybe standardizing on a shorter runtime for all streaming, then it would be the same thing. Like, yeah, you would lose certain types of experiences that some part of the audience would really like, but most people just kind of they want the survey view. It's like not everyone wants to get a PhD in any given subject, but a lot of people
That's a
will
good
take the
point.
survey course. So you're going to make your money on the survey course. And the people that do PhDs will end up doing a lot of teaching and like maybe informing the survey course, but uh, they won't make it. Their books won't sell as much because they'll be too esoteric.
That makes
Yes.
sense. And actually, the best show I've watched recently is that show Sugar on Apple TV Plus, which I've made both of you watch the first episode with me. But that
I
show is
like it.
yeah, the first episode is 54 minutes, and then the other 7 episodes are all half hour, and it worked
Oh,
really
okay.
well for a show of. And I feel like most shows of that style and tone are usually around that 42-minute standard mark. So I think it
Mm-hmm.
is trending towards. Um, yeah, with that show, it came out where they did episodes weekly, and I didn't get into it until after the final episode had just come out. So I was able to watch it in rapid succession, and it feels longer than 8 half-hour episodes, but that's what it was. So I think that is
Hmm.
confirming what we've talked about. But I've
Yeah,
this
I,
has been like a thinker of an episode. I haven't thought this hard in a
for
podcast in a long time. I'm
yeah. A
can feel my brain
counterexample
getting
though,
tired.
Yeah, did you guys watch Glow on Netflix? So I think
No, I never saw that.
yeah, the
Mark
first two
Maron's a
seasons.
producer on that, right? I like his comedy.
Yeah, he was good. But the first two seasons were given to a lot of like really examining both sides of these characters and making sure that we get to have enough time to go explore not just the main character in depth, but some of the supporting characters as well. And there's
Okay.
like a lot of depth, and we could explore the contradictions. And it wasn't just about hammering a theme home to the audience. It was actually like letting these characters kind of live and breathe. And then a new producer picked it up for the third season, and they made it a half-hour sitcom of itself, and it just
Really?
lost like so much.
So
Like
initially it was about like 50-minute streamer episodes.
yeah, and just the tone change. It got a lot more messagey, a lot more activisty, and like I
Okay.
stopped watching at that point too because I was like, no, I want the first two seasons. Give me like something a little more thinky and meaty, more challenging, and the half-hour format did not do that show good. And I think it only lasted one more season after that.
Interesting.
But on the other hand, if you're going to start off knowing your half-hour drama, like Friday Night Lights, I think was the first one, uh, then you're going to do a good job. But trying to take a show that starts off longer and then cut it down to half hour, the audience will notice they'll miss the amount of time that you used to have to do deeper explorations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jake, I can hear Bruiser through your headset. That's adorable. I can hear his dog snoring. Jake has the cutest dog. He's adorable.
Nice.
He's got a very deep snouted snore.
It's awesome. What kind of dog is he?
He's a pit bull.
Nice.
I'll edit in a little slow motion video of him running from that time I was testing my camera at your place.
Yeah,
it's like my little Bruiser stock photo of him just running on the sidewalk.
Like 120 frames a second, so this is like jowls are flapping. Yeah,
I've got with DaVinci with changing the frame rates. I got to figure that out still. I'm learning that, but John, Jake, thanks for this awesome podcast. My brain is fried because you've given me so much good stuff to think about as a writer and producer myself of like what kind of movies and shows I want to make. But this has been a great discussion. This has been a really cool episode. Really appreciate you guys joining. This has been really cool.
Cool. I'm glad my brain dump, was gave you something to think about.
This was like a brain workout in a really good way. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Well, I'd love to do another follow up to this on a future episode. I feel like we got a good chunk of the surface, but there's still a lot more to dig and explore. So this is fascinating stuff, and awesome.
Yeah. I'll go see a few more movies this summer, and then I'll have something to talk about for sure.
There you go.
Let's all meet up in Castle Rock and go watch some movies. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Kind of the
like
middle ground. Yeah. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you for a great episode of Nerds and Friends.
All right. Bye, friends.
Yes.